Day 4, in which the labyrinth of the library can finally be explored in great detail and a tragic event occurs within the story. A second tragic event is the adaptation of the first tragic event in the series. The variations in the story of Umberto Eco diverge more and more at this point. Some scenes from the book have been moved significantly, both for the film and for the series. The series, however, breaks out of the processes of the novel very strongly. As we shall see, the authors sometimes turned entire storylines around in order to be able to stretch the plot itself. In addition, as already indicated, the mood is actually different. But let's first see what Atso has to say what happened that day at the Abbey. The news of Berengar's death spreads immediately, of course, and upsets the monks. In Severin's hospital, he and William examine the dead body and determine that he must have drowned. But since the space around the tub was clean, William deduces that Berengar was not forcefully pushed under the water. But then how did he die? Based on the condition of the corpse, William estimates that Berengar must not have died the night before, but a day earlier. He further suspects that it was Berengar who stole the book from the table of Venantius in the scriptorium. Severin then says that it is quite possible that Berengar wanted to treat himself with a relaxing, calming bath after this action, because he was very sensitive. Sometimes it even happened that something upset him so much that he fell to the ground, foaming out of the mouth. However, Berengar must have been somewhere else before going to the bathhouse, because the book in question is not there. At this moment, Severin notices something. When I examined the corpse of poor Venantius the day before yesterday, I found something that didn't seem particularly important to me. The fingertips of 2 fingers on the right hand were slightly blackened by a dark substance. Just like here, look, the fingertips of Berengar. Yes, and here are marks on a 3rd finger too. The day before yesterday, I assumed Venantius might have touched an ink in the scriptorium. William takes a closer look at Berengar's fingers. Marks are found on the thumb, forefinger and middle finger of the right hand. Faint marks are also found on the thumb and forefinger of the left hand. So Berengar and Venantius touched the same object. Severin lectures about poisons that can kill by touch alone, but then William discovers that the corpse's tongue is also black. So he grabbed something in his hands and put it in his mouth, meaning it was not a poison that kills on contact. Severin remembers that some time ago a monk had brought him a certain poison that would cause death from paralysis within a very short time. But there was a storm some time ago that devastated the hospital because of a door that was left open. After Severin had cleaned up, he noticed that the bottle with the poison seemed to have disappeared. He had looked closely. It hadn't been there with the broken bottles. Someone must have stolen it and is now killing monks with this poison. William and Atso next look for Salvatore, as William wants to know if the night's events about the girl have anything to do with the dead bodies. They find him, and William interrogates him so hard that he confesses he brought the girl to the abbey for Remigius. He also admits that he met Remigius when they still were both part of Fra Dolcino's gang. William and Azzo then go to Remigius. William first engages him in a conversation about the farmers who live in the village below the abbey, and is confused of the various measures used to measure grain, meat or liquids. "You measure wine by tankards, for example, don't you?" William said. Remigius replied, "Or by jars. 6 jars are a vat, 8 vats a keg. Or the other way around, a jar is 6 pints of 2 cans each." By cleverly inserting hints into the conversation, William gets Remigius to come out with the truth. Salvatore has often smuggled girls from the village into the abbey for him, which is why he is out and about at night and has overheard quite a few things. For example, that Berengar was also tempted by the flesh, not by a girl, but by a confrere. In addition, Remigius found the dead Venantius before he ended up in the pig's blood vat. He was lying on the floor in the kitchen. A broken cup lay next to him and there were traces of water. But since Remigius was out at night because of the girl, he decided to do nothing and wait until someone else found the dead man in the morning. However, he was very surprised when Venantius was found in the vat of pig's blood. But he does not know who could have brought him there. When William states that Malachias is the only one who can move freely in the edificium, and thus in the kitchen, Remigius strongly disagrees. William suspects that Malachias has something on Remigius, especially since the cellarer has confirmed Salvatore's confession. Both belong to Fra Dolcino's followers. The Franciscan further deduces that Venantius either drank the poison from the cup in the kitchen or that he was already poisoned when he came into the kitchen and wanted to drink water because he felt a burning sensation in his bowels. At that moment, Severin arrives and brings back William's eyeglasses, which he found in Berengar's habit, making it clear that he really was the thief. Immediately afterwards, they meet the master glazier Nicholas of Morimont, who in turn has finally finished the new eyeglasses and is a little disappointed when he sees that William has found his again. However, the Franciscan calms him down and says that the new glasses are better and that he will only use the old ones as a reserve. While William, now armed with 2 pairs of glasses, sets out to decipher Venantius' writings, Azzo, plagued by love sickness, roams around the abbey. After 2 hours, he meets his master again, who has translated Venantius' notes. These are fragments that apparently come from a book, but seem very confused. "Take advantage of the ugly and mean lowly people, derive pleasure from their shortcomings. They must not die." William is stuck and lies down in his cell to meditate, and this melancholy in turn connects him to Sherlock Holmes. Azzo, meanwhile, goes looking for truffles with other brothers and the servants of the monastery, where they run into the just arriving delegation of the Franciscans. After their arrival, a conversation develops between the leader of the delegation, Michael of Cesena, William and Ubertine, which deals with the historical background of the election of Pope John XII. Shortly thereafter, the papal delegation under Cardinal del Poggetto arrives. Here, Azzo finally gets to know the man he has already heard a lot about, Bernard Gui. He was a Dominican of about 70 years, thin but taut and tall. What fascinated me the most were his grey and cold eyes, which could stare blankly at their counterpart, but also often flashed meaningfully and were able to both hide his thoughts and express them in a targeted manner at the right moment. If anyone is wondering whether this description might appropriately match the appearance of Professor Moriarty, Sherlock Holmes' adversary, I have to say, unfortunately, not really. Apart from the fact that both are tall and thin, there are no similarities. Gui already knows what happened in the Abbey. He and William show their dislikes to each other, and Gui makes it clear that he will now solve the case. After a walk, William and Azzo meet Alinardus again, who explains that Berengar's body was actually found in water, matching the trumpet from the Apocalypse. He then hints that he should actually have been a librarian, but was trumped by another, but whom God soon brought into the kingdom of darkness. After the meal, Azzo meets Salvatore, who is carrying a bundle with a black cat. After Azzo inquires more vigorously, Salvatore admits that he wants to make a spell involving the eyes of a cat, horse manure and 2 eggs to make a woman submissive. During the night, William and Azzo secretly enter the library again and track down the scheme according to which the books are sorted in the rooms. The first letter of the aphorisms painted on the walls of the rooms give the clue. Each room has a letter. A red letter is the beginning of a word, and the words are names of regions from which the books in those rooms come from. For example, Gallia, France, Hibernia, Spain or Roma. The books from Africa are kept under the word leones, lions. The room with the S is the one with the mirror. William suspects that the mirror is the entrance to the Finis Africae, where very special books are kept. One of those special books has to be the one that this whole case is about. But the old monk has no idea how to open the secret door. While searching, Azzo discovers a couple of books that tell about the love disease that he thinks he has, since he has been thinking about the girl, the rose, all day. The further search then brings distraction, which is strongly advised in one of the books. But the night is not over yet. As the two sneak out of the library into the basement of the edificium, they hear noise, and the monks are coming from everywhere. But what happened? The archers of the papal delegation patrolled the abbey at night and caught Salvatore taking the rose through a hidden entrance in the walls of the monastery. Since they also found the ingredients for Salvatore's magic, the black cat, the eggs, the horse manure, and a black rooster, everything is clear to Bernard Gui. Witchcraft. Salvatore and the rose are locked in cells in the basement, and Salvatore is to be interrogated that night. The whole situation makes the delegation of the Franciscans nervous. According to Gui, a bad magic is working in the abbey. He may be able to extort a confession through torture from Salvatore, which can be used in the dispute and in general against the Franciscans. And with these dire fears, the 4th day of the story ends. Now let's first look at how the library and the enigma of the books kept there were implemented. Umberto Eco has done some very good work here, because not only is the edificium on whose upper floor the library is located described in great detail in the text, but a map has also been drawn that has been inserted into the text. Here it becomes clear again according to which system the rooms are sorted, and you can also see very clearly where the so-called Finis Africae is located. Dante Ferretti, the set builder for the film production, was critical of the edificium. While the maze would work well in a novel, which is inherently written as a maze, visually such a maze of corridors doesn't offer much for the big screen, he says. On the one hand, the edificium on the novel has only 2 floors and is therefore flat as a brie cheese. On the other hand, the disorientation of the main characters must be clearly understandable, and that almost instantly because there's not much time in a movie. If we had used a horizontal maze, it would have been necessary to film it from above, but then the viewer would have been able to see the exit, making it pointless. Instead, Ferretti chose a model that killed 2 birds with 1 stone. On the one hand, the edificium was now several stories high and an imposing building towering over the entire abbey. On the other hand, the labyrinth became 3-dimensional. To To get into the maze, you have to go through a trapdoor, and the first thing you see is a sea of stairs, each leading into a different direction. Spread over 5 floors, the film library has 12 hexagonal rooms, completely identical and crammed with books, which are connected by 60 identical staircases, each with the same number of steps. The whole thing was so confusing that chalk markings on the floor were necessary to show the film crew the way to and from the shooting location. And interestingly, in the novel, William considers using Ariadne's thread to find his way around the library. In the film, it is actually used. Atso quick-wittedly ties a thread of his woolen underwear to a table and pulls it behind him. That way he and William find the way out quicker. Ariadne's thread goes back to the legend of Ariadne on Crete, who gave Theseus a ball of yarn when he entered the labyrinth under the palace to kill the Minotaur living there. After defeating the Minotaur, Theseus found his way out of the labyrinth thanks to the thread. Eerie noises and lamps that emit beguiling vapors are not found in the film, but trapdoors are. The aphorisms are not mentioned, and as far as I can see, they are not found anywhere except above the mirror with the secret door. But that aphorism is also essential to the plot. Also, William and Atso do not make a map of the maze. In the series, more is adapted again. In fact, the map that the two monks draw here is much more complex than in the book. Here too, it should probably be indicated that the library is several stories high. The aphorisms and the sorting of the rooms were also adopted. However, and I don't understand this, there are rooms in which the passageways are blocked with bookshelves, and not in the sense of a secret door. The two monks only get into the anteroom to the Finis Africae by lifting a shelf completely and putting it aside. This is somehow illogical and impractical for everyday use in the library, as there are only 2 people allowed to go there. The mirror that is the secret door to the Finis Africae is described in the book as a distorting mirror. In the series it is smooth. Furthermore, the two have to climb a flight of stairs to get into the anteroom. On to the rest of the plot and back to the film. The conversation between William and Remigius does not take place in this form, so the moviegoer does not find out that it was Remigius who found the dead Venantius in the kitchen. Salvatore doesn't tell Atso that he's planning a ritual. Instead, we see him performing it in the evening while the rose is there. I find the scene a bit confusing though, as it's not clear what Salvatore's purpose is. He sets up everything and asks the rose to spit on the eggs. This is essential for the spell to make her fall for him. After doing that, Salvatore gives her the black rooster, probably for food. He probably lured her with it. Then, before he can kill the black cat for the ritual, Salvatore is overcome by his lust and lunges at the rose. She fights back, knocking over a lamp in the process. Since the two are in the stable, a straw bale is immediately set on fire. The fire alerts the monks and the guards, who then arrest Salvatore and the rose. Bernard Gui, who has just arrived, recognizes witchcraft in the utensils, black rooster, black cat, and wants to put them on trial. Atso urges William to tell Gui that the rose is innocent, since she wanted the rooster to eat for herself and her family. William waves it off and says the rose is burnt flesh. He also tells of a confrontation with Gui, where William didn't want to pronounce a man guilty of heresy, so Gui had him tortured. The result? William recanted and the man was burned. The event led to William's retirement from being an inquisitor. The fact that both Venantius and Berengar have blackened fingertips and blackened tongues is already mentioned in the film when examining Venantius' corpse, leading to the following hilarious interaction between William and Severin. William discovers black spots on Venantius' forefinger and thumb. Severin: an ink stain. William opens Venantius' mouth and discovered that the tongue is just as black. William: he didn't write with his tongue. Did he? Incidentally, the fact that Severin is missing poison is not even mentioned in the film. The eyeglasses are also found with Berengar, but they are broken because the thief dropped them. In the film, by the time Berengar's body is discovered, the abbot has already made the decision to leave the further investigation to Bernard Gui. Also, another fact was added to the film to make things a little clearer. Berengar's shoes have very noticeable grooves in the soles, so William recognizes the sole imprint he saw in the snow after Venantius was found in the pig's blood vat. Another detail I noticed: the guards of Gui in the papal delegation in the movie speak Swiss German. This is supposed to be an allusion to the Swiss Guard, the Pope's guards, but is historically incorrect. The Swiss Guard did not exist in 1327. As far as the series is concerned, I am now again forced to anticipate the plot, because the sequences have completely reversed here. Just as a reminder, in the novel, the processes followed the following scheme. Berengar is missing. Azzo meets the Rose, they have sex. Azzo confesses to William. William and Azzo find dead Berengar. Examination of Berengar's corpse, conversation between William and Remigius. Bernard Gui arrives. Azzo and William search the library again. Salvatore and the Rose are arrested by Gui's guards. Now this is what happens in the series. Berengar is missing. Conversation between William and Remigius. William and Azzo find dead Berengar. Azzo and William break into the library again. Azzo secretly meets with the Rose and must free her from a trap set by Salvatore. Bernard Gui arrives. Another conversation between William and Remigius. Azzo secretly sneaks into the forest, he and the Rose have sex. The dispute between the papal delegation and the Franciscans begins. The Rose falls into Salvatore's trap again, is knocked unconscious by him and carried away. Azzo has a nightmare, so he confesses what happened to William. Salvatore locks the Rose in the paper mill. Back at the abbey, Salvatore gathers the ingredients for his spell. Azzo learns from Anna that the Rose has disappeared. The dispute continues. There are further events that will be reported later. Severin is killed and Remigius arrested as his murderer. Salvatore begins the ritual in the paper mill. Gui's guard go in search of Salvatore. Remigius is tortured. Gui puts him on trial. Azzo goes in search of the Rose. He finds her and Salvatore in the paper mill. Azzo and Salvatore fight. Azzo falls into the mill stream and is carried away by the water. Shortly thereafter, Gui's guards arrive and arrest Salvatore and the Rose. Yes, this is still supposed to be an adaptation of the novel of The Name of the Rose, not an action flick. And I've left out most of the scenes with Anna because they are not important at the moment. But I think that makes it clear what I meant with my comment about the changed structure of the series. Instead of following the novel, events have been flipped and mixed together to have appropriate cliffhangers. So episode 5 ends with Salvatore locking the Rose in the paper mill. Then we see Azzo praying in the church after confessing to William, while being watched suspiciously by Bernard Gui. Episode 6 ends with Salvatore and the Rose being arrested after we see Azzo fall into the water and been dragged away unconscious. I also noticed a second stylistic device, and I'm reluctant to call it a stylistic device, although viewed neutrally it is undoubtedly one. Personally though, I would only call something a stylistic device if it has a positive effect on the plot, but the exact opposite is the case here. And this stylistic device is called teasing, which can certainly create an arc of suspense, but the series The Name of the Rose suffers from the phenomenon that has also affected other well-known series, such as Doctor Who or Sherlock. The teaser brings up a riddle, secret, or other significant plot point. This is intended to create tension in the viewer as to where this plot point may lead. But it should be part of the teaser that the plot point then is resolved, which would be called Chekhov's gun. That doesn't always happen though, so the teasers only serve to keep the viewers engaged, who wait and wait and wait. There are several such teasers in the series. For example, Gui learns that Atso is the son of a German baron who is loyal to the emperor. He is loudly outraged that the emperor has brought a spy among the Franciscans. Oh no! What terrible fate might Atso now face? Will Gui have him arrested and tortured? During the interrogation of Salvatore, Gui finally learns that Atso had sexual intercourse with the Rose. Outrageous! William of Baskerville's novice broke celibacy. Oh no! And is William involved? Will he too be arrested and tortured? What can only come out of these plot points? I can sum it up in one word: nothing. In both cases, it appears that Gui is already planning what to do with the information, but nothing happens until the end of the series. It is all a narrative sleight of hand, so to speak, to keep viewers hooked until the end. However, those who know the novel will have already realized that not much can come out of it without the further course of the story having to be changed drastically. Yes, more drastically than has already happened. This is sometimes fatal for the authors. On the one hand, they twist and change the plot a lot, but on the other hand, they stick very much to the original, especially as far as William is concerned. Let's take an example. After Atso had sex with the Rose, he confesses to William. Nothing is repeated in the novel. After all, we had the scene just before that. Atso only writes that he reported everything truthfully. In the series, Atso only hints at what happened to William, to which William says something which is verbatim from the novel. Atso, you have sinned, both against the vow of chastity and against your duty as a novice. There's no doubt about that. To your relief speaks that you found yourself in a situation in which even a pillar saint in the desert would have sinned. William can make that remark about the pillar saint in the novel because Atso described him in detail what happened. On the series, he doesn't really know what exactly happened, other than that Atso had an experience he will never have. The situation is similar with REIMNITZ. In the conversation he admits, just like in the novel, that he occasionally gets involved with women whom he secretly has smuggled into the abbey. We don't see that, however, since the role of the Rose has completely changed. Strictly speaking, this passage could have been left out of the series. Due to the changes, it no longer plays a role in the plot. One thing the authors anticipate at this point is the relationship between Malachias and Berengar. After Berengar's death, there's a scene in which Malachias bids farewell to Berengar, revealing that he too felt more than brotherly love for the dead. This is not discovered until later in the novel. Let's have a look at the actors of Bernard Gui. F. Murray Abraham plays Gui with little subtlety. He usually speaks very loudly and makes no secret of his enmity towards William. This is most evident in the scene where he loudly and triumphantly presents the ingredients for Salvatore's spell. Abraham holds up a real black cat by the neck, which meows miserably to itself. In fact, he is rarely quiet, probably mostly just to catch his breath and shortly afterwards to be all the louder again. The open enmity between Gui and William is also not from the novel. It was presumably written into the movie for the sake of suspense. In the series, he is portrayed by Rupert Everett, who plays a god-possessed inquisitor who knows how to play with nuance. If it helps his cause, he can appear very friendly and even speaks Occitan with the Rose, only to be cold and unapproachable again shortly afterwards. In most scenes, we see him with a droopy mouth and a grumpy face. He also gets loud, but not as often as Abraham. We also see how strong the fanaticism of this Bernagui is. In one scene, he is cutting open his forearm with a knife. In another, we see scars on his knees, which apparently also stem from self-mortification. Like his film counterpart, this Bernagui believes in torture as means of finding out the truth. Actually, I don't want to be too hard on the series, because it gives the story more depth than the movie can, and stays close to the novel in large passages, only to stray very far away from it in other passages. And in my opinion, one doesn't outweigh the other. But well, we still have 3 days and are slowly heading towards the finale of the story.